for another video. Second part on my lathe stand. Sorry for the noise. I've got the garage heater going, so it's going to be a little bit loud. Before I actually start on the legs, I'm going to work on the mounting bolts. As you can see, these are a M12 bolt and nut. The holes themselves are quite close to the edge, so I'll have to get a die grinder in just around these welds here, just so the nut will fit nice and flat on the surfaces, on the mounting surface, and I will probably tack weld them in and make them a captive nut. That's the nuts welded into place. Hopefully they won't go anywhere. Now I'm making a start on the legs. I'm going to use this piece here to brace the underneath of the top frame, and then I'll have the two legs coming up to the ground, and this piece here will brace the four legs coming off each corner at the bottom, so hopefully it'll be nice and strong. But first I've got to notch out these two pieces of angle iron so this can sit nice and flat and I can actually weld it all along. Again, I'm using the same tape measure as I did before, so there's no miscalculations on the measurements. I have most of the stand tacked together. I just have to do one more piece across there on each end. I'm waiting on my adjustable feet still to arrive so I can fit them, but I'll be able to weld that cross piece on today. But for now I'm going to start welding things up so it's all nice and stiff. The stand itself's starting to weigh a fair bit now. It's probably around the 40 kilo mark, maybe a bit more, and with those last two pieces on it, it'll probably maybe push it up to maybe near the near 50 kilo mark. Well, that's as much as I can do today. I'm almost out of gas on the welder, so I'll have to get some more gas, finish off these welds along here. And I've drilled the holes for the adjustable feet. Hopefully they will arrive in the next few days so I can actually finish all this off and get the lathe all set up. That'll be good. Sunday afternoon, I've finished building my lathe stand. I've set up my lathe, given it a bit of a clean up. The adjustable feet arrived on Friday afternoon, so I was able to actually set it up all properly. I used spirit levels and everything like that on the lathe, but the bed itself has a slight twist that way, so the headstock or the machine head end is all nice and flat, but the tailstock end twists away from me just a fraction. I think it's something like 0.04 of a degree off. I think for a home workshop, I think that's pretty acceptable. As you can see, it's all nice and clean. I've given everything a nice light oil, and I've given it a test run, and it works as good as gold. I've set up a dial gauge to check the concentricity of the lathe. I know it's a little bit out, but I just wanted to see how much it is, and we'll have a look at it now. The picture's a little bit fuzzy, but on the dial gauge, each line represents 0.01 of a millimetre. So this is give me a pretty good reading. I've got the dial gauge set up fairly close to the chuck. I've re-zeroed the dial gauge just to show you. Closest to the chuck, it's sitting on the 0 mark. I move the carriage towards the end of the piece in the chuck, and you'll now see a bit difficult to see. It's very hard to focus this camera, but it's 0.15 millimeters, and it is pointing that way. It's heading towards the back wall of the shed. The piece of stock I have in the lathe at the moment is a shaft out of a car gearbox, so that should be pretty straight, and we'll see how it is, see how straight it actually is. I've got the lathe running slow at the moment, so I don't so the gauge doesn't go too wild, and we'll see how we go. As you can see, the dial gauge is floating between 0 and the 5th mark, which is 0.05 of a millimetre. So that's fairly acceptable for me. At the other end of the piece, the gauge is roughly floating between 15, which is 0.15 of a millimetre, and 5, which is 0.05 of a millimetre. I've now set the dial gauge on top of the shaft I've got in the chuck, and I'll now run the carriage down along it to see the alignment of the work in the chuck in an up and down position. I've now got to the end, and you can see it's 0.1, so 0.13.5, so 0.135 millimeters out, and the end piece is actually dropped towards the bed. Done a bit of machining off camera using the automatic feed. It's come up pretty good, but I will have to get some new cutting tips because these ones are pretty old and I've used and abused them a fair bit, so I think it's time for some new ones. Well, that's the lathe setup. It's all good to go now for whenever I need to use it. I won't be doing any more work on the garage for a little bit because I've actually got to go and bird proof the house. I've got a family of crimson rosellas decided to use my eaves as a nest. So over the next few weeks I'll be bird proofing all of that, and I'll probably do a video of it and show you what I've done. Throw in some lights as well on the outside of the house, a bit more insulation to block off any gaps or anything like that, and hopefully solve the bird problem, make the house look a little bit better, throw a bit of light around at night, and encourage the birds to live up in the trees where they're supposed to be. Thanks for watching.